Hello,
How are you?
I'm good.
Mhm.
And you?
I'm really good. Thanks for asking. My name is Madison. It's so nice to meet you.
So, there are many things to learn new words and vocabulary, you know,
Uh-huh.
and I have point out some things like that. Number one is reading newspaper every day.
Yeah, that's a great technique. It's a really good exercise. I always recommend to my students to read something like the New York Times or the Los Angeles Times to better their vocabulary.
We can learn new things, new technology
Definitely.
from
Would
newspaper.
you like us to go over a newsletter?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Bangladesh, I read a newspaper as Prothom
Uh-huh.
that is huge popular in Bangladesh.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Cool.
Number two is reading books.
Yeah.
How books can help to learn new words and vocabulary. If you
I would
can
say that,
explain.
yeah, so I would say that while newspapers maybe talk about very specific events that are happening in, the popular culture at that moment,
Yeah.
you can find information in books more about fantasy or talking about education, maybe talking more at depth and in a
Yeah.
more analytical approach about a
Mhm.
very large subject. So you might read the New York Times and it'll tell you about the presidential elections that are going on. And it'll tell you about one event that happened yesterday that's talking about the presidential elections. If you get a book that talks about democracy in the United States, then that will talk about not just that presidential election, but all of the presidential elections. And so while they're both very good sources of vocabulary, I think books might offer a way to analyze a subject more at depth. So you're able to break it down into more parts. Newspapers, because of their format, are for shorter digestion of information. Does that make sense?
I think it can be literature, poem, novel, whatever it is,
Uh-huh.
but we can learn from the books new words and vocabulary, and
Yeah,
it will be helpful to use in our daily life and
definitely.
remember.
Hmm. Also, too, for some people, it's more fun. So, newspapers report on news. Sometimes people don't want to read news. They want to read like a fantasy or sci-fi or some adventure. So, if that helps people to learn another language, maybe, a fiction book or something that's more fun might be in their best interest.
So number three is watching movies.
Yeah, I would say watching movies is probably one of the most common ways that people try to learn another language. It's very helpful, but it won't teach you kind of like the grammar or the higher vocabulary of language like newspapers and books can. I would say watching TV and watching movies is a way to understand how people speak. Does that make sense? A book and a newspaper is for formal writing and for formal situations. A movie or a TV show is more informal. You're going to hear slang, you're going to hear more expressions, you're going to hear the emotion.
Essence,
Yeah, more
more
accents. That's very true. Exactly. So you'll hear the difference between somebody from England and somebody from Australia, right? And at the same time, you're able to kind of see how people use language. So in a newspaper, it'll be very factual. yesterday morning at 8 o'clock, there was an explosion in Lebanon, Beirut. This is a very point of matter. This tells you exactly what happened. But if you hear it on a news broadcast or you watch a movie, it can be more like, oh my goodness, did you see what happened yesterday? And then someone would be like, no, what happened? There was a huge explosion in Lebanon. So that still tells me the same information, but one is very factual, right? And the other one is maybe how I would say it to my family member or my sister.
I think basically movies can help us to understand and listening to others people.
Yeah, exactly. How people say things, how they use language, how are they sarcastic, how do they make jokes, how do they make fun of one another, how do they relate to certain situations.
And how they respond to each others also.
Definitely, yeah, how people interact. So watching movies and TV sometimes can help students understand at a faster pace. So something that I always do when I watch any media in a different language is I have the subtitles on in that language while I'm listening, because this helps me be able to visualize the word when I want to say it or when I hear it, or if I see it, I'm able to hear what it sounds like.
So that means it help us to understand rapidly of that language.
Yeah, exactly.
Like this.
There are different ways to understand how people use language and how people respond to one another, as you said. The thing with TV and movies is that you're going to get a lot more of what the people do versus books and newspapers are much more of the way we're supposed to use language or the very formal aspects of the language.
So it's a informal way, but it will be effective to listen someone, to listen other people like USA English, Canadian English, and British accents.
Totally.
You know.
Because everybody has different phrases. There are lots of things that are said in England that I don't use in my speech, but I know it because I've watched movies or TV. Abu, thank you for your time, and hopefully this was helpful.
Okay, bye bye.